Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today on the Super Soldier Report. And here's an update about the last mission that we just did regarding the Rock of Gibraltar and Andalusia in that area, in the northern bank they called it. So I know that's south, but there was a reference to a northern bank. And what I think that they were talking about is the northern part of Africa. But also remember the linking from that portal of the Herculean portal that was opened up and brought an opening revealing the river Styx and into Hades, as you would know it. So the incident that happened went well. There were what I saw was the Council of Five showing up actually in the river Styx, and that some of the things got closed down, which was very good. I do believe that there's still some of those species out there, some of those species that were thriving and getting into all sorts of things, that typically they're kind of controlled and contained in that one specific area, and instead they were kind of allowed access out. Now some of these beings, like I said, it was able to portal out to Antarctica, and so we already have some issues there. But what I thought I'd share with you today, I got some news that there was actually some news regarding Gibraltar. And so we did the report on the 16th, and today's the 18th, and there is an article in the Sun. It says Spanish warship ordered commercial ships to leave Gibraltar's British waters on Sunday with its guns primed for action. And so the Tornado's crew can be heard in the audio recording of a radio exchange telling vessels anchored at the Rock to leave Spanish territorial waters. And so it was a string of standoffs involving the Spanish and British ships. So these are the beings that, they're full of trickery. They're definitely are influencing these people and could literally bring in a war. And here's a perfect example. This is the location that I mentioned to you before. This is where they came out of. So that came up, and we're going to keep an eye on that. So the mission's not quite over since they're out roaming around and getting into things. Obviously some sticking around the area, but I'm going to post that article, also the link to that article, so you can read it in its entirety, and you can actually hear the gentleman speaking to him and telling him that he needs to leave, and you can feel the tension through the discussion. Another thing that I told people to start looking out for is the white outfits, the white lab coats. The lab coats coming from future corporations in a lab that are here, and we've had discussions about. I talked about this with Chris regarding the incident with the yellow vests, and how there's many, and I've also talked about in the Dronicus transmissions about how that they wear these strange lab coats. I mentioned John of God. I mentioned I think it was Marina Abramovich, and some of the satanic work that they do, and then you see it in the LA urban military stuff that they do. These people walking out in these white outfits. And now again, there's an article of Nancy Pelosi and a bunch of women dressed in white, claiming it has to do with the women's rights movement. But like I said, if you have to prove that you're pure, and this is not a reflection on a judgment of whether the woman's a virgin or not, and I personally, I don't really care about any of that stuff. My main concern is, are the white lab coats, the scientists in the future they're trying to manipulate and have integrated in some kind of pocket overlay, influencing some of these different things happening. And you're seeing like some abnormal things happening, and there's the white outfits. So just you keep your eyes out for that. Regarding the mission in the River Styx, the one that they're looking for is that the ferryman, Charon or Charon, which sounds awfully close to Chiron. And if any of you know, I mean, he sort of looks like a demon of a sort. If you've ever had any encounters with him, I know I have, and he's not pleasant. Can do some really nasty stuff if he doesn't agree. And I know they call him the Wounded Warrior, but here again, you know, not everything is as it seems. And some of these beings love the idea of sympathy and compassion, but meanwhile reigning, you know. And I've talked many times about Michael having his alternate personality that people don't refuse to look at. Some people who are honest enough will look at it. Others want to stay in this belief system and close their eyes and not willing to look at the possibility. Now, we all have expressions of contrast, and none of us have been 100% good, but then there are those that are literally being involved with agendas that are contrary to humanity. We need to be mindful of that, and sometimes if it is disturbing to us that we had a specific belief system, then I think the right thing to do is, if you want to be in alignment with the truth, be willing to look at, even if you're not aggressively going after any of these beings, but no longer worshiping and following them. Don't open yourself up. It's not worth it in the end. You'll be sorry. Of course, some will listen, some won't listen. They're going to have to learn on their own way. But I did warn you. That was my responsibility. I also, there's an article. So I have this thing with Nancy Pelosi and all the women that they dressed up in white. I'm trying to find that article right now. And so anyhow, I don't see it in front of me. There it is. It looks like it is Democratic House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi arrives in the DCCC headquarters in Washington, D.C., November 8th, 2016. Oh, this was an older article, but someone else brought this up to me before. I don't know if this is more recent. Yeah, no, February 2017. So anyhow, someone said something about this. Maybe I found the wrong article, but we'll look into it a little further. Anyhow, like I said, keep an eye on the white outfits. So what's next? Mission's still going. We're still looking for rogue species that came out of the River Styx, and so it's not 100% complete. Andronicus kind of gave me a heads up that there are the giant species that are wanting to show up, and if we don't probably do the cleanup here, then probably there'll be some other incidences that would occur. Now, for those of you that don't believe that there are giants, there were giants in our history. Of course there were. They have skeletal evidence of it in different regions of the world. And I did leave a nice little story from the Native Americans. I would say nice little story. I mean, it's kind of a frightening story if you see it as a reality or truth, but about a giant by the name of Ea, who is typically identified as another name for Enki or Poseidon, as we know it. So here again, just because we've been told that it's just fantasy or lore, it doesn't necessarily mean that these beings didn't live or they aren't still alive, because they are immortals. So we have to just disconnect from them, stop being in a place of worship or admiration for what they've done, and as they lose power, you don't want to be dragged down with them. So there was also Trump was acknowledging that these are extraterrestrials that's were coming up the caravan, and I have heard that there were some of the people in South America claiming that they're afraid of what they're seeing, and so this coincides with what I saw in Gibraltar. So here again, the news is showing there's activity going on. It's coinciding with what I said, and we just need to keep alert, keep going. You're doing a great job. We're all working together, and it could have been, these things could have easily have triggered a war, so it's good that they are brought to where they need to be. Okay, so that's it for now. We have some links for you, and I will keep you updated. Oh, and also a last note, the video that I have regarding this gentleman, I think it's the 14th minute when it starts talking about some of the stuff that he talks about. Let me see if I can get his name. Let's see. He goes by the name of Evolutionary Energy Arts, and he says, coup, treason, Spanish warships order vessels out of the UK waters, winds of war. Some of the stuff he says about Trump I don't necessarily agree with, but that's his expression and point of view. But around the 14th minute is when he starts talking about the Spanish warships. And what's really interesting, and now I would say I'm 99% positive that he doesn't listen to my work. And that's one of the things I kind of like, is I'm kind of in the background. The people don't know what I'm saying. It's not really like I don't have 10,000 people listening or whatever. But so he starts telling the story about this incident happening with the Spanish warships, Gibraltar, and that whole area. And then he brings up Jericho, the name Jericho, and tells a story about Jericho from the Bible and how he dealt with war and battle. And I thought it was quite interesting. So, and also that they mentioned, of course, Macron and some of the other things that are going on in the world. And I know that I was just about ready to wrap up, but there's another thing too, is that if people are not aware of it, just to keep your eyes open. There are millions of people that are protesting in Belgrade now, similar to the Yellow Vests, and they're wanting to see change, sending them energy and assisting them to find some liberty and freedom from oppressive leaders. And I know that part of the world has had their share of them. Those too are entities, dominions, as I've talked about before, claiming and ruling over humanity in other dimensional space and creating hardship, sorrows, pains, lack, and so forth. So we continue to do the work and to help. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'll keep you updated.